The Anzac Day truce, if you can really call it that, is over.
Whether it's defence, diplomacy or development, the Morrison government's dropped the ball at every stage.
I could understand Labor's criticisms if we hadn't established 6 additional embassies. They are playing politics with the Pacific.
Today got spicy as Labor unveiled its plan to win friends and influence people in the Pacific. And they marked the occasion by giving the coalition both barrels over its lapsed leadership in the region.
They want a leader they can trust to do the job. But they got Mr Morrison, the bloke who went missing while China negotiated and signed a security deal on our doorstep.
As for Labor's actual plan, an extra $525 million over 4 years toward health, infrastructure and education projects. They'll also re-establish an ABC presence, which was wound back after coalition budget cuts in 2014.
I sent in the AFP. The Labor Party wants to send in the ABC. They have a Q&A solution in the Pacific.
The funds will also support climate change adaptation and mitigation.
Pacific Island leaders have made absolutely clear that their number one national security and economic challenge is climate change.
The time is prolific because you're about to be, have water lapping at your hands.
Morrison, meanwhile, keen to make the Solomon situation a mainly military matter.
They cut funding in defence when they should have been increasing it.
This is classic Scott Morrison marketing 101. They just want to talk about Labor as if they haven't been in power for the last 3 years.
In amongst the biff, the PM also expressed confidence that the crisis has been overblown.
Prime Minister Sogavare has already communicated directly to me. They don't support a Chinese government military base in the Solomon Islands either.
But is either side offering a deal good enough to bring them back into the fold?
And Labor Senator Kristina Keneally joins us now. Senator, whatever we're offering, China can probably match it and then some. So do you think what you're proposing is actually enough to resolve this?
Well, you are absolutely right that China can outspend us. But we have natural advantages here. Up until the election of this tired Liberal government, Australia was the country of choice for the Pacific. And our people-to-people relationships, our shared values and identity are a natural resource for us to re-establish and re-emerge as that first choice for our Pacific neighbours. I think it's important to understand here, this isn't just about one thing. It's not just about defence, it's not just about economic support, it's not just about climate change, it's about a whole-of-government approach. Mr Morrison dropped the ball when it came to the Pacific. He left a void that China has stepped in and filled. We need to be countering that presence in the Pacific.
We've got some background noise behind you there, so we thank you for dealing with that. But surely if Australia is going to become, the choice of the Solomon Islands, that relationship is going to be re-engaged through these measures. Surely the timing of this, is it possible that these measures, though, are really for the Australian voters, not so much the Solomon Islands, because they've made it very clear as a sovereign nation that they can act with whoever they want?
Well, indeed, this is a sovereign nation. We're talking about the Solomon Islands, but we're talking about the whole of the Pacific region. And it's quite alarming to see on Mr Morrison and Mr Dutton's watch that China has established a foothold in the Pacific, just 1,600 kilometres from Cairns. And the reality is here that when Labor was in government, we were the natural choice, we were spending more, we were more engaged with the Pacific. Mr Morrison has pulled out our broadcasting. China has stepped in and is broadcasting now on English language TV and radio. Mr Morrison, knowing about China's intent to sign this agreement before it was signed, in fact, didn't even send his foreign minister over to talk to them. This is about bolstering those relationships and building up our Pacific family.
I wonder if that's Scott Morrison on the announcement there, just trying to get in.
It might be China. Very loud announcements.
We'll push on. You're right, this is about the whole of the South Pacific. It's also really more about the United States than it seems to be about us. And I want to draw you on that because the US, in the middle of last year, they announced a new military base in the Federated States of Micronesia. They're planning to extend these compacts that they have with 3 different North Pacific states that allow for free military movement across those countries and include military installations. And looking at that, China would probably, understandably, say, well, hang on, if you're going to up your presence, we're going to up ours. Do you hold the view that America is the only country in the world that is entitled to establish a military presence across a region like this?
Well, we, of course, are an important strategic partner with the United States, and it underpins much of our foreign policy and strategic security. But I think the point here is, Waleed, we raised concern, Anthony Albanese raised significant concern when the Port of Darwin was sold to a company linked to the Chinese Communist Party. We raised concerns about the Liberal government's intention to sign an extradition treaty with China.
But
we have
with respect,
consistently
Senator,
raised
that's
concerns
a
about.
different
But my
point.
point is
that's quite beside the point. The point is about
this.
American expansion in the region, and then China wanting to respond to that. And given that we are seen as allies, indistinguishable from the US, we can hardly be surprised when China wants to turn up on our doorstep. And throwing some money at the problem doesn't solve that problem, does it?
Well, Waleed, the point of this is that China is growing more assertive and aggressive in our region. China doesn't share our democratic values. China doesn't share our same interests and values in the way that we share that with the United States, one of our most important strategic partners. And we should be concerned and we should be alarmed that as Mr. Morrison and Mr. Dutton pulled out of the Pacific, China walked in through an open front door and established this relationship with the Solomon Islands. We should be the natural partner of choice, and today's announcement is our whole-of-government approach to address the real security issues, including climate change, that our Pacific Island family are raising.
Senator, we thank you so much for your time this evening and also for powering through with all of those announcements.
Thank you.